25. Strangest 1970s. Toys you'll never see again. Get ready to travel back to the wild world of 1970s toys, where creepy dolls laughed too long, rockets flew a little too fast, and fun often came with a hint of danger. From strange to shocking, we're uncovering over 25 bizarre toys that somehow made it to store shelves. Trust us, you won't believe these were actually made for kids. J.J. Arms action figure. Among all the action figures of the 1970s, J.J. Arms stood out, not just for his gadgets or cool look, but because he was based on a real-life hero. Unlike your typical caped crusader or comic book cop, J.J. Arms was a real private investigator. After losing both hands in a childhood accident, he didn't give up. Instead, he reinvented himself with high-tech prosthetics and went on to build a career busting criminals and solving complex cases. The action figure captured this incredible story. He came equipped with interchangeable prosthetic hands, one a hook, another a knife, and others with different tools, giving kids a glimpse into his gritty, ingenious world. This wasn't just another toy with gimmicks. It was a miniature tribute to a man who turned personal tragedy into purpose. Kids could reenact daring stakeouts and secret missions, all while seeing a character who didn't let physical limitations define him. And while the design was cool and the adventures thrilling, what really made the toy special was the message behind it. J.J. Arms wasn't just tough, he was inspirational. In an era when disabilities were rarely represented in media or toys, this figure reminded everyone that strength comes in many forms. And sometimes, the real heroes don't wear capes at all. Hugo, Man of a Thousand Faces. Back in 1975, Kenner released something truly bizarre. Hugo, Man of a Thousand Faces. And trust me, this wasn't your average toy. Instead of a full action figure, you got a bald, blank-faced head with hauntingly realistic features and a disguise kit. That's right. Wigs, fake beards, scars, noses, mustaches, even a little pot of putty. The idea? Turn Hugo into anyone or anything your imagination could conjure up. He could be a spy, a villain, a rock star, or a terrifying creature from your own nightmares. But here's the thing. Kids didn't go for the subtle look. Nope. They got creative. Wild combinations of bushy eyebrows, jagged scars, and crooked mustaches turned Hugo into some truly monstrous sights. What was meant to be fun quickly became unsettling. Some parents even claimed they'd find Hugo stuffed in closets or tucked behind furniture, saying he was just too creepy to keep in plain sight. The blank stare, the ever-changing face, it gave off major Uncanny Valley vibes. Still, that didn't stop Hugo from gaining a cult following. Kids were fascinated by the ability to manipulate identity, to shape a face however they liked. Strange, disturbing, and totally unforgettable, Hugo was the stuff of 70s toy legend. The Inchworm. In the colorful world of 1970s toys, few were as lovable and strangely lifelike as the Inchworm. With its bright green body, oversized cartoon eyes, and friendly grin, this ride-on toy instantly became a backyard and playroom favorite. But it wasn't just the look that won kids over, it was how it moved. The Inchworm had a simple but clever design. When kids bounced up and down on its saddle, it would inch forward with a smooth, spring-loaded motion, just like a real caterpillar stretching and squishing along. With each bounce, it made a series of satisfying clicks and clacks, adding a bit of mechanical magic to the ride. The noise, the motion, and the visual bounce gave it a playful, almost lifelike personality. For younger children, the Inchworm was more than a toy. It was a friendly little companion they could ride around the house or sidewalk. It didn't need batteries or fancy electronics. Just a bit of leg power and imagination turned it into a personal creature on wheels. Lazy Daisy. In 1971, a doll hit the market that was unlike anything kids or parents had seen before. Her name? Lazy Daisy. And true to her name, she had one trick that made her both hilarious and unforgettable. The moment you laid her down, she'd instantly collapse like she just couldn't keep her eyes open another second. No buttons to press, no batteries to change, just a simple built-in mechanism that made her flop over in dramatic fashion. At first glance, Lazy Daisy looked like any other doll. Sweet face, cute outfit, friendly expression. But once she performed her signature fall asleep move, she left quite an impression. Kids found it amusing. Some thought she was exhausted after a long day of imaginary play, while others turned it into a game, seeing how many different ways Daisy could faint. Parents, on the other hand, either laughed or found her a little weird, but quirky as she was, Lazy Daisy carved out a special place in the world of vintage toys. Her odd little gimmick made her a talking point in many homes, and over time, she became a favorite among collectors. Growing Up Skipper. In 1975, Mattel introduced one of the most eyebrow-raising toys of the decade, Growing Up Skipper. This wasn't just another Barbie accessory or outfit swap. This doll actually grew before your eyes. With a simple twist of her left arm, Skipper would magically get taller, and her chest would noticeably develop. It was all part of a built-in mechanical gimmick that made her appear to mature in real time, complete with a distinctive clicking noise that made the transformation even more surreal. The commercial was cheerful, announcing, "Now she's growing up, just like you." But not everyone found it so heartwarming. The shift in Skipper's appearance was drastic, and it sparked instant debate. While the idea was meant to show the natural changes of adolescence, some parents and critics were taken aback by how literal and physical the transformation was. The doll didn't just suggest maturity, it physically demonstrated it. Many began questioning the message this toy was sending. Was it encouraging healthy conversations about growing up, or was it reinforcing unrealistic ideas of womanhood? Either way, Growing Up Skipper made a lasting impression. Whether you found her fascinating, awkward, or downright inappropriate, one thing's for sure: no one forgot her. Were any of these toys banned in your home growing up? Tell us your childhood horror or hilarious stories. Baby Laugh-A-Lot. In 1976, the toy world gave us something that still haunts the memories of many. Baby Laugh-A-Lot. The name promised joy, giggles, and innocent fun. But what kids got instead was nightmare fuel in plastic form. At first, when her batteries were brand new, Baby Laugh-A-Lot let out high-pitched giggles that could almost pass for playful. But as the batteries wore down, everything changed. Her laugh slowed and deepened. What once sounded like a giggling baby suddenly transformed into something straight out of a horror flick, like a possessed doll cackling in slow motion. The unsettling laughter wasn't just creepy, it was unforgettable. Kids would leave the doll sitting on a shelf only to hear her chuckle randomly in the middle of the night. Some parents even pulled the batteries out, convinced the doll had a mind of its own. And Baby Laugh-A-Lot wasn't the only eerie toy around that time. Enter the Jolly Chimp, a cymbal-banging monkey with wide, staring eyes and a frozen, toothy grin. His mechanical clatter alone was enough to make your skin crawl. Some children swore the chimp would start banging on his own, without anyone around. Whether coincidence or something more, both of these toys blurred the line between playtime and paranormal. Welcome to the spookier side of the 1970s toy aisle. Super elastic bubble plastic. In the anything goes era of the 1970s, one toy managed to toe the line between fun and flat-out hazardous: super elastic bubble plastic. On the surface, it seemed harmless enough. Kids were handed a tiny tube filled with colorful, gooey plastic and a small straw. The goal? Squeeze out a blob, stick the straw in, and blow yourself a bubble. Not just any bubble, though. These were stretchy, rubbery spheres that didn't pop as quickly as soap bubbles and felt more like tiny balloons. But there was a catch, a big one. The second you started blowing, an intense chemical smell hit you like a punch in the nose. It was sharp, plasticky, and unmistakably toxic. That smell came from the solvents in the plastic, substances we now know should have come with a warning label. Back then, it was just part of the fun. Kids would hold their breath, wave the bubble around, and keep blowing, all while unknowingly inhaling fumes that would make today's safety experts cringe. Still, none of that mattered to the kids of the 70s. The thrill of creating your own wobbly bubbles far outweighed any concern about safety. Super elastic bubble plastic was messy, smelly, and possibly dangerous. But in its heyday, it was a toy box treasure. Ventriloquist dolls. Back in the day, ventriloquist dolls were marketed as fun, interactive toys. But let's be honest, they often felt more like props from a horror film than something you'd want in your bedroom. These weren't soft, cuddly companions. They were stiff-bodied figures with plastic faces, mechanical jaws, and eyes that never blinked. The idea was that you could make the doll talk by pulling a string or pressing a lever, creating the illusion of life. But the reality, it was downright creepy. Those wide, unblinking eyes gave the dolls a lifeless, frozen expression that made people uneasy, especially in the quiet of night. And when the mouth suddenly moved with that distinct clicking sound, it could give you chills. Add in a dark room and a little imagination, and suddenly the doll didn't feel like a toy anymore. It felt like it was watching you. These dolls were popular in ventriloquist acts, but outside of that context, they rarely made people smile. Instead of sitting proudly on shelves, many were quickly banished to attics, closets, or the back of the toy box. Their stiff grins and glassy stares became the stuff of childhood nightmares. Milky, the marvelous milking cow. In the 1970s, toy companies weren't afraid to get a little weird with their ideas, and Milky, the marvelous milking cow is a prime example. At first glance, Milky looked like your average plastic farm animal, but she came with a twist. Soft rubber udders that could be filled with water, allowing kids to milk her just like a real cow. It was marketed as a wholesome, hands-on farming experience. What could go wrong? Well, plenty. You'd pump water into Milky's hollow rubber udders, then squeeze and watch the milk squirt into a toy pail. It was oddly satisfying for a while. The trouble began when kids forgot to drain the water. Over time, that trapped liquid would sit there, festering inside the udders. What started as a cute farm activity quickly turned into a biology experiment gone wrong. The water would grow cloudy, the smell turned sour, and Milky became less of a toy and more of a smelly, leaky mess. Parents weren't thrilled. Cleaning out the udders was no small task, and eventually, Milky found her way into closets, basements, or straight into the trash. What began as a playful introduction to dairy life ended up teaching a different lesson. Rubber udders and stagnant water just don't mix. Big Jim's Wolf Pack. In the world of 1970s action figures, Big Jim's Wolf Pack didn't just push boundaries, they karate chopped right through them. These weren't your standard issue toy soldiers, no sir. The Wolf Pack was a team of muscle-bound heroes, each loaded with exaggerated swagger, powerful weapons, and one unforgettable gimmick: karate chop action. With a flick of the wrist, your figure could deliver a knockout blow, perfect for jungle ambushes or beachside brawls. But here's where it got truly weird, in the best way. These warriors didn't wear standard camo? Nope. They fought crime and conquered missions in combat-ready beachwear. We're talking bright board shorts, wraparound sunglasses, tank tops, and even the occasional beach hat. They looked like they were ready to hit the waves right after taking down a villain. It was an oddly brilliant mashup, Rambo meets Baywatch. For kids, this meant non-stop, wild adventures. One minute your figure's deep in the jungle, the next he's chasing bad guys across a tiki bar. The contrast between heavy artillery and laid-back outfits made every mission a little more ridiculous, and a lot more fun. Do you think toys today are safer but less fun? Comment yes or no and tell us your take. Giant missile-firing robots. In the wild world of 1970s, toys few were as thrilling or as dangerous as the giant missile-firing robots. These towering titans of plastic stood nearly 2 feet tall and were loaded with spring-powered weaponry. We're talking launching fists, detachable heads, and missiles that could shoot across the living room like a rocket. For kids craving explosive battles and larger-than-life showdowns, these bots delivered chaos in the best way possible. The appeal was obvious. The bigger the robot, the louder the crash, and the farther the missile flew, the better. Every part of these robots felt like it could be used in battle. Twist the torso, pull the trigger, and boom! A fist goes flying at your little brother, or a missile takes out a row of action figures. But there was a downside to all that power. Parents quickly realized these weren't just toys, they were home wreckers. Walls got dented, lamps were broken, and yes, a few emergency room visits followed when playtime got a little too intense. One of the more infamous instruction manuals even encouraged kids to aim directly at their friends, because safety was apparently optional in the 70s. Despite the risks, these robots became legends. They were everything a 10-year-old wanted and everything a parent dreaded. Fun? Absolutely. Sensible? Not even close. Jaws board game. In the mid-1970s, just as Jaws was making waves at the box office, toy shelves were invaded by a game that brought the movie's terror home: the Jaws board game. Imagine the classic game operation, but instead of a patient, you're sticking your hand into the gaping jaws of a plastic great white shark. That's right. This game dared kids to pluck items from between a shark's teeth, knowing full well that one wrong move could trigger a terrifying snap. The concept was genius in its simplicity. Each player took turns removing random objects, license plates, boots, fish bones, from the shark's mouth using a tiny hook. But what made it unforgettable was the tension. At any moment, the spring-loaded jaws could snap shut with a loud clack, catching your hand and ending your turn with a jump scare worthy of the movie itself. Unlike other board games that focused on strategy or luck, Jaws tested your nerves. Steady hands, calm breathing, and a bit of courage were the only way to win. Kids loved the suspense. Parents loved watching their kids squeal, and for anyone who had seen the movie, it was the perfect way to relive the thrill, minus the ocean. Pulsar, the ultimate man of adventure. If you thought the 1970s couldn't get any weirder when it came to toys, meet Pulsar, the ultimate man of adventure. This wasn't your typical action figure with just muscles and a plastic weapon. Pulsar had something no one else did: a transparent chest that let kids peer straight into his body. And get this, his internal organs weren't just painted on, they were removable. Glowing squishy parts you could take out, poke, and examine like a junior scientist or mad doctor. His beating heart and pumping lungs gave the illusion of life, blending sci-fi adventure with anatomy class in a way that was equal parts cool and creepy. You could practically hear the wild stories being made up on living room floors. Pulsar on a mission, heart in hand, saving the world one glowing organ at a time. But every hero needs a villain, and Pulsar had Hypnos. Now Hypnos? He wasn't just evil, he was hypnotically evil. With a swirling mind control wheel embedded in his skull, Hypnos could bend people to his will. Kids could twist the wheel and imagine entire armies falling under his control. Together, Pulsar and Hypnos created a strange science fiction showdown that felt straight out of a comic book fever dream. Weird? Absolutely. But unforgettable? You bet. Star Team action figures. In 1978, Ideal Toys launched a bold attempt to join the galactic gold rush sparked by Star Wars mania, with a line called Star Team. These toys had everything a space-loving kid could want: armored heroes, evil villains, futuristic weapons, and cool vehicles ready to blast off into interstellar battles. Sound familiar? That's because it was. From their design to their theme, the Star Team line looked suspiciously like a discount version of George Lucas's Galaxy far, far away. The similarities didn't sit well with Lucasfilm, and legal action quickly followed. But in a surprising twist, Ideal won the case. The court ruled that Star Team didn't infringe on the Star Wars name, claiming the star stood for space travel and reconnaissance. Nice save, right? Even though it dodged a lawsuit, Star Team never became the blockbuster hit its inspiration was. Still, the line carved out a quirky little niche of its own. One standout figure, Knight of Darkness, a shadowy, masked villain clearly inspired by Darth Vader, became a cult favorite. His design was sleek, menacing, and just unique enough to stand apart. Hasbro's Great Moves game. In 1978, Hasbro decided to throw logic and personal space right out the window with the release of Great Moves, a party game so ridiculous it was genius. Imagine trying to draw a cat or a spaceship, but not with your hands. Instead, you'd strap a pen to your hip, knee, or elbow, and then use those body parts to doodle on a whiteboard that's literally strapped to your partner's chest or back. Sound like chaos? That's exactly what made it fun. Great Moves was part drawing game, part physical comedy. One person played the human canvas, doing their best to stay still, while the other awkwardly wiggled, twisted, and contorted to make even the simplest shapes appear. The results? Hilariously bad artwork, a lot of laughter, and probably a few sore muscles the next day. This was no quiet board game. It was loud, silly, and demanded teamwork, timing, and a total lack of shame. The worse you were at drawing, the more fun it became. Hasbro took the basic idea of games like Pictionary and cranked up the absurdity, giving families and friends an unforgettable excuse to get weird together. While it never reached classic status, Great Moves lives on as a perfect example of 1970s party game madness, when fun meant moving, laughing, and not taking yourself too seriously. If you could bring back just one of these strange toys, which one would it be, and why? The Sunshine Family Dolls. In the glitzy world of 1970s toy aisles where Barbie reigned in high heels and luxury, the Sunshine family marched in barefoot carrying handmade baskets and big, wholesome energy. Released by Mattel, this gentle trio, Steffi, Steve, and their baby sweets, were the antithesis of Barbie's glammed-up lifestyle. No mansions, convertibles, or glittery gowns here. These dolls lived simply, dressed modestly, and embraced a life rooted in creativity, love, and a touch of hippie spirit. The Sunshine family lived like they were part of a back-to-the-land movement. They made their own furniture, grew their own food, and even had a craft van for selling handmade goods at local fairs. Their accessories included spinning wheels, pottery wheels, and sewing kits, not makeup mirrors or fashion runways. They felt more like your artsy neighbors who recycled before it was cool and believed in peace, community, and family time. Mattel wasn't just selling dolls, it was tapping into the growing 1970s counterculture. This was an era when people were questioning consumerism, embracing DIY, and moving towards simpler, more intentional living. And while Barbie was off being a CEO, the Sunshine family was home, weaving rugs and planting tomatoes. Ronald McDonald doll. In the 1970s, McDonald's brought their beloved mascot into homes across America with the release of the Ronald McDonald doll. On paper, it sounded like a winning idea. What kid wouldn't want a toy version of the cheerful clown who gave out Happy Meals and made birthday parties special? But in practice, Ronald's doll form turned out to be far more disturbing than delightful. The doll featured Ronald's signature bright red wig, yellow jumpsuit, oversized red shoes, and of course that frozen, toothy grin. But there was something off about him. His wide eyes were painted in a way that made them feel like they followed you across the room, and his plastic skin gave him an unnatural, glossy sheen that didn't exactly scream cuddly. The smile never changed, no matter where you placed him, and somehow that made it worse. Many kids who owned the doll reported feeling creeped out by it, not because it jumped or made sounds, but because it just sat there, always watching, always grinning. What was supposed to be a symbol of joy ended up feeling a little too lifelike, like a clown that never blinked. The disturbing homeless doll. Among the many strange toys to emerge from the 1970s, few stirred up as much confusion and controversy as the so-called disturbing homeless doll. Marketed as a tool to teach children empathy, this doll came dressed in torn, ragged clothes with matted hair, smudged skin, and a hollow, distant stare. The intention, according to its creators, was to raise awareness about homelessness and spark conversations about compassion. But what landed on store shelves told a very different story. Rather than inspiring empathy, the doll's unsettling design left many feeling uncomfortable. Its exaggerated, almost cartoonishly bleak appearance made it hard to take seriously. Instead of being a thoughtful representation of hardship, it came off more like a parody, reducing a complex, painful social issue into a plastic, mass-produced caricature. For many parents, the message felt poorly delivered, and for kids, the toy was more likely to confuse or scare than educate. It didn't help that the doll didn't come with any context or educational material, just a blank, sorrowful face and a sense of unease. In the end, the disturbing homeless doll became less of a teaching tool and more of a cautionary tale. Proof that even with good intentions, some ideas are better left on the drawing board than in the toy aisle. Thank you for watching. To continue with more content, comment 1 to let us know you're still following. Pogo sticks. In the 1970s, owning a pogo stick wasn't just about having fun. It was a rite of passage. This simple spring-loaded stick turned sidewalks and driveways into stages for childhood stunts. With each bounce came a satisfying boing, a jolt of excitement, and the ever-growing challenge to stay upright just a little longer than before. Kids who mastered the pogo stick weren't just playing, they were earning serious playground cred. Balancing while bouncing, landing clean hops, even trying to turn mid-air, it all took skill, coordination, and a whole lot of practice. And when you nailed it, you felt like you were flying, if only for a second. The pogo stick brought physical play to the next level. It didn't need batteries, screens, or complicated rules. Just hop on, grip tight, and start bouncing. The longer you could keep it going, the more impressive you were to the neighborhood crew. Wipeouts were part of the process, and scraped knees were worn like trophies. During those endless summer afternoons, the pogo stick was more than a toy. It was a test of balance, bravery, and pure determination. And for many kids growing up in the 70s, that iconic boing, boing, boing sound still echoes as one of the coolest thrills of the decade. Toy cigarettes and bubble pipes. In the 1970s, some of the most curious toys weren't spaceships or superheroes, they were playful imitations of grown-up habits. Among the strangest were toy cigarettes and bubble pipes, products that reflected a very different era in marketing and culture. These novelty items were packaged to look strikingly similar to real products, often featuring bold designs and familiar branding. Candy cigarettes were slim, chalky treats, sometimes with red-tipped ends to resemble a glowing ember. Meanwhile, bubble pipes offered a more whimsical twist, allowing kids to blow bubbles through colorful plastic pipes that mimicked the appearance of adult accessories. At the time, these toys were promoted as playful fun, fitting into the larger trend of pretend play that mirrored everyday adult life. Looking back, it's clear these items were products of a time when public attitudes around certain behaviors were vastly different. Today, they serve more as odd relics from the past, reminders of how toy culture once blurred the lines between imitation and influence in ways we'd think twice about now. Creepy crawlers. Back in the 1970s, Mattel gave kids the perfect excuse to mix science with a little gross-out fun. Creepy crawlers. This wasn't your average art kit. Instead of making something cute or decorative, you got to create your own army of slimy, rubbery bugs. From spiders and centipedes to wiggly worms, creepy crawlers let you cook up the weirdest critters your imagination could dream of. The magic started with a bottle of Plastigoop, a colorful, thick liquid that you'd pour into metal molds shaped like bugs. Once filled, you'd slide the mold into a small electric oven, which was basically a toy-sized bug factory. After a few minutes of heating and plenty of anticipation, you'd pull out a freshly formed rubber insect, ready to scare your friends or gross out your siblings. What made creepy crawlers so cool was how it put the power of creation in kids' hands. You weren't just handed a plastic toy, you made it yourself. The process felt a bit like a mad scientist experiment, minus the safety goggles. Kids could mix colors, test new mold combinations, and create entire bug armies. Sure, it smelled a little weird, and yes, it got hot, but that was part of the charm. Creepy Crawlers wasn't just a toy, it was an experience. Strange, creative, and just the right amount of icky. Vertibird. In the 1970s, one toy took flight, literally, and became a must-have for kids who dreamed of adventure both on the ground and in the air. That toy was the Vertibird, a hybrid marvel that combined a sleek helicopter with the maneuverability of a land vehicle. At first glance, it looked like a standard chopper, blades spinning, ready for liftoff. But with a clever twist, literally, the spinning blades could fold down to become wheels, transforming the Vertibird into a speedy little ground cruiser. This wasn't just a gimmick, it was a game changer. One moment, you were navigating an imaginary rescue mission from the skies, and the next, you were racing across the living room carpet, dodging couch legs and toy block obstacles. The toy's smooth transformation between flying and driving modes gave it a lifelike versatility that few others matched. Designed to handle just about any indoor terrain, the Vertibird could zoom, pivot, and take off again with a satisfying mechanical hum. It captured the spirit of innovation that defined so many 70s toys, turning simple playtime into thrilling missions with every flight and roll. Thanks for joining us on this wild ride through the strangest toys of the 1970s. If we missed your favorite weird toy, let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Past Not Past with someone who remembers these bizarre blasts from the past. See you in the next video.